I think the digital era has not changed the imbalance of the audiovisual industry. So for me, it's still unbalanced. I think that the first word that would come to my mind would be unbalanced, and unbalanced in the sense that there is imbalance in the international exchanges of cultural goods and services, and also inside markets, if we can still talk about national markets when we are talking about internet, right? But we can still have research being done in each country, right? To see, as we've seen these 2 days in the conference. So I think that's the first characteristic, and also the first sorry, and the first problem we have. So for me, that's also why the convention, the 2005 convention on the diversity of cultural expressions, is so important. Implementing this convention is still so important in the digital era, also because of all this digital shift, and also despite the digital shift, right? Because we've been told for many years that internet would bring limitless storage space, that we would have all this potential for distribution that would help increasing diversity. And actually it's still a potential, right? It's still something that has not been materialized if we see in practice how things have been evolving. So the convention is still very important because of that, and I'm bringing my response also to international law, because that's my expertise, and maybe I'd like to have this registered in this interview. The main players are first the majors that already existed, that have been investing in this new market, and we also have what we call the net giants, the GAFA, the Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, so which are new players that have appeared in this new environment. But one player also that is really important, I think, for this industry is the state. So the state as a player, I think, has a role to play, and a reshaped role probably, that has to be redefined, right, in this new era. But still, I think there is the state still has to intervene in order to guide and correct the market, without being able to predict everything, because it's simply impossible, but being able to, I wouldn't say react, but actually act in a positive manner towards cultural diversity, as recognized in this 2005 convention, UNESCO convention on the diversity of cultural expressions, and bringing it to my expertise field. So I would recall all this cultural exception subject we've been talking about in these last days. So I think it's important, if a state wants to be able to intervene in the right way, appropriately, right, considering the national circumstances, because of course there is no one-size-fits-all policy. But if a state wants to have this flexibility to be able to intervene in the right way, I think cultural exception techniques in trade agreements, international trade agreements, are still very important. So this is something that this player, the state as a player in this audiovisual industry, digital audiovisual industry, should be thinking of. Mm-hmm. I think the first challenge is the fact that we're still trying to understand this whole new reality, and also understanding it according to national circumstances. And this is something difficult for everybody, right? Because it changes all the time. It's a new environment that is really dynamic, and I think this is the first challenge. It's being able to understand it so we can respond to it in the best way, in the most appropriate way. I think the second challenge, I would say, is finding a strategy, finding a digital strategy that includes audiovisual includes cultural diversity as something that is really important for society, right? Especially today with social media, and so we see all young generations that are so influenced by these new technologies, right? So having this in mind and being able to establish a strategy that is also capable of evolving, capable, not a rigid strategy, a rigid program would never work in such a case. So we really need a political strategy that can respond to changes and be able to adapt itself and have different scenarios maybe that are established so the state can act accordingly, right? And maybe a third important barrier or challenge, I would say, would be combining state intervention with private intervention, civil society intervention. So there is a need for a multi-stakeholder approach. That is very important in the internet themes. In any case, and when we talk about internet governance, we have to think about the state plus other actors that are very, very important today. So combining these actions, all these actions from these different actors, I think is something still very difficult. And so the state, when I talk about public policy and importance of the state intervening and making sure it keeps its policy space when it's negotiating trade agreements, the new cultural policies that a state would have to think of would have, in my view, to think about all these actors and how to stimulate action, correct action and appropriate action in the sense of cultural diversity, in the direction of cultural diversity from all these actors, and being able to combine all of this in view of cultural diversity according, of course, to the objectives and principles of the 2005 Convention.